So another game we need to talk about today that's going on, Miami versus Michigan at noon Eastern time on ABC. Obviously, Miami's not going to be the juggernaut this year they were hoping for. Michigan State kind of been a bit of an underrated team, but a team that's not really going to be competing for a national championship. I still want to talk about some 2022 NFL draft prospects from both these teams playing this game. Starting off with super senior quarterback Diera King. He's a Houston transfer. Obviously, he's been at Miami for a little while now. We know what King is. Now, he's probably going to be selected. He might be a priority UDFA. He's not going to be a significant NFL quarterback, probably. But you never know. Some guys sometimes just come out and ball out and have success for some reason. Diera King, though, he's a decent quarterback. He's always going to be a college football legend to some extent, but he's never going to be a stud prospect just because of how his limitations are set up currently. Also in that offense, junior wide receiver and Oklahoma transfer Charleston Rambo and junior running back Cameron Harris. Two players to keep an eye on, along with junior tight end Will Mallory. Of those three, Will Mallory is probably the most impressive and probably has the best chance of going in the first. Well, probably going day two, I would say, in rounds 2 and 3. The other guys, they're there. They're just not, they're not superstars at their positions. Cameron Harris is going to be buried behind some running backs on a very weak running back year, by the way. He's still going to be buried behind a lot of guys. And as for Charleston, he just does not separate himself from the pack of wide receivers. He's probably going to be, like I said, a mid-round selection because, again, there's more impressive wide receivers, there's more productive wide receivers. So he's just not going to separate himself enough to really find a space to be a day 2 selection. I think Harris and Charleston specifically are going to be day 3 guys. The most interesting player along that offense is actually Zion Nelson, the redshirt sophomore left tackle, because his spike in growth is incredible. Because he's gone basically from a guy who was so underweight to just like getting bullied along the offensive line or at any point during drills to a guy who now is finally starting to bulk up. He's at 316 right now, probably has the size to play at the NFL level. The question is really going to be, is he a first-round guy? Is he a second-round player? Is he a high third-round selection? There's a chance he ends up being a first-round guy, just based on the fact that he's grown so much since moving to left tackle and since putting on all that weight during his time in Miami. The projection for him in the NFL level is that he's going to continue to grow and still develop at the position because he's still so new to it. So Zion Nelson, a guy really to keep an eye on, potential first-round pick for Miami. Junior defensive tackle Nesta, Jade, Silvera, another guy to keep an eye on. Not necessarily a famous name in this draft class, not something you're going to hear too much about. But again, these interior defensive linemen this year, it's a weak class. A lot of these guys are going to be productive. More of them are going to be productive against the run than the pass. Certainly, Jade Silvera falls into that category. 8 tackles were lost last year, only 1 sack. Already has 2.5 tackles were lost this year. Again, a lot of interior defensive linemen designed to stop the run in this year's draft class, which likely means they're going to be day 3 picks because that's not something that's super valued in the NFL, or at least you can find a lot of guys who are already in the NFL capable of doing that. You don't necessarily need to go out and draft someone. But I think Jade Silvera will be drafted. It's just a question of when. And then Zach McCloud, linebacker / edge rusher / kind of moved all over the place for them in Miami. Could have gone to this past draft class and probably been taken. He comes back from their year. I don't know where he's going to be taken. I really don't know. I had him a lot of times going in the 6th or 7th round in my mocks this past year before he decided to return to Miami for another season. I don't know where he's going to end up. He's 254 pounds, 6'2", just a bit of a weird build, a little bit of a tweener, so I don't really know where he'll end up going in the draft, but just a player to keep an eye on. Georgia transferred Tyrique Stevenson in that secondary from Miami at corner. Hasn't really made a mark yet on the season. Has 3 passes defensed already, but I'm guessing that's because he's been targeted quite a bit so far into the year, especially against Alabama, so we'll see how that works out. I'm not holding out hope for him being drafted very highly. I think he'll actually probably go back to school instead of coming out because he is a redshirt sophomore still, I believe. And then Bubba Bolden, the safety, USC transfer in Miami. He's been there for 3 years now. Bolden is part of a deep safety class this year and probably going to be a 3rd or 4th round selection. He's just not on the same level as guys like Kyle Hamilton or Brandon Joseph or some of those guys we talked about, Jordan Battle as well. He's just not caught up to those guys. And that's unfortunate. But even looking like Jaquan Brisker for Penn State, he's just not on the same level as those players. So I expect him to be drafted probably on day 2 or early day 3. But he's just not going to be a player that's going to get the hype of being a first-round level guy. Then on to Michigan State, we got to talk about Kenneth Walker the third, obviously. This Wake Forest transfer has come in and just lit everything up for them this year. Did not have the most impressive game this past weekend, I believe. But still, I mean, through the first 2 weeks of the season, he was phenomenal. And Michigan State is rolling currently. They're looking much better than I expected them to, if I'm being honest. I thought Michigan State would be kind of get torched this year. And certainly they've not been like, this is not a juggernaut. This is not Michigan State having a tremendous comeback year or anything like that. But still, this is a very good team, a very underrated team. I think they have an upset bid against Miami, but a lot of it comes down to Kenneth Walker and how he's going to perform and how he's going to be able to create for this offense, because he is their primary running back. Even though they have other running backs on the roster capable of making movement, I would put a lot of faith in Kenneth Walker here if we're going to try to win this game. And junior wide receiver Jayden Reed, he's a Central Michigan transfer. Fairly productive player since from Michigan before coming to Michigan State, kind of making a little bit of a jump up, even though these programs necessarily have a great quarterback. He had 797 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns during his freshman year with Western Michigan before going to Michigan State. This past year, he had 407 yards and 3 touchdowns in 7 games. Already has 245 yards and 2 touchdowns this season. So again, very productive so far. Him and Kenneth Walker are going to be the guys to keep an eye on. They're going to be the 2 players that are really going to run this offense. You also have to look at senior right tackle AJ Arcuri, I believe is how I say his last name. Not going to be a first-round pick, not going to be a second-round pick, probably not going to be a day 2 pick at all. Probably a late-round selection or a priority UDFA, but just someone to keep an eye on there who has had rumblings, who has had some success and somewhat turned the eyes of some scouts. Again, a late-round kind of guy, someone you probably want to take if you just personally like him, you think you saw him, you think you can develop him into something. That's probably where he's going to end up going, not necessarily in the early rounds because of his success or lack thereof. And then say if you're Xavier Henderson, again, another guy buried in a very deep safety class. I would not pick him as a day 2 selection. I think he's probably going to be day 3 as well. Very close to where Bubba Bolden goes. Already this year, 17 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 1 interception, and a pass defense. So he fills up the stat sheet overall pretty nicely. Did not have an interception this past year in 2020. Had 2 the year before that in 2019. Kind of up and down productive-wise. Very good against the run, I would say. If you're looking at someone who's going to be more like a box safety, more that like, I don't want to say linebacker / safety hybrid because that's not necessarily what I want him to do. But if you're looking for like box level safety, someone like Xavier Henderson might be able to fill that role. He's 6'1", 210, so a decent amount of weight on his body, not necessarily huge. I'd be really interested to see the measurements on his arms, his arm length, to see how that will match up. If he's going to potentially stack and shed some blocks on the interior if they line up closer to the line of scrimmage. But again, someone to keep an eye on. Probably going to be a day 3 selection, probably an early day 3 selection, and already off to a hot start in the 2021 college football season.